Okay, folks, welcome. We've a busy schedule, so we better make a start. And I'll make a start just by welcoming everyone. So welcome to everyone here with us in the room. And welcome to those joining us online, who are by far the greater majority of our audience today. At last count, I think we have over 160 people registered, which is great. For people who don't know me, my name is Gearóid Ó Súilleabháin. I'm the head of the TEL department. That's the Department of Technology Enhanced Learning here in MTU. And I'm also the chair of the National Digital Leadership Network, which we're marking the launch of today. So for people in the room, I have a few quick housekeeping matters to go through. In the unlikely event of a fire, we will exit this way. That's stage right for you in the room, and we'll go down to the car park outside. Toilets are located nearby. You'll have passed them on your way here. Actually, just go out through the foyer again, turn left, and the toilets are then on your left. If you need assistance or you have any special requirements, please let one of our staff know, and we'll be happy to help you out. Those of you joining us online, you'll have to largely look after yourselves, I'm afraid, but of course let us know if there's any technical issues that we can help you with. Okay, look, you'll hear more from me in a little while, but right now it gives me great pleasure to welcome on stage our president, Professor Maggie Cusack, to formally open the event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gearóid. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my very great pleasure to be with you here this afternoon and to welcome you all, our colleagues and contributors and distinguished guests, to welcome you all to Munster Technological University and to open this very important event that marks the launch of the National Digital Leadership Network, the NDLN. So I think today is one of really great strategic importance, and it's not just of strategic importance to MTU, but of importance to the technological university sector and actually to the broader Irish higher education entire system. So a really significant day that we're marking here. We're very well aware that we're in a world that's increasingly interested in all things digital. And we're at a time when expectations are changing really quickly around the ways in which education should respond. And I think that the launch of this network then it feels really necessary and it feels timely. So we know that the NDLN was established under the N-TUTORR Programme, and that had financial support from the EU, from the Next Generation EU initiative. And we're all very well aware that N-TUTORR was a really significant project in our sector. And I think it was an absolutely outstanding example of how the sector could collaborate really effectively. So it's something we should be really proud of and something that we should be really grateful for, everything round N-TUTORR. We can see just the impact of the N-TUTORR project, and it doesn't even seem fair just to call it a project. It was so much more than a project. It was a major happening, I think, but it really delivered for our sector significant and really lasting changes, and lasting changes in the way we organise and we support our teaching and our learning and our technology provision across the sector. So we know that the N-TUTORR programme has concluded, but I'm absolutely delighted to see that work from the N-TUTORR programme, including the Digital Leadership Network, the fact that it continues. So it's guided by a national steering board, and it's composed of sector leaders and external experts who are all really deeply committed to the development of strategic digital leadership in higher education. I think it's really important to point out that this isn't just a network that's built around technology for technology's sake. I think those of you who are here in the room and the larger number who are joining us online know that digital leadership is about far more than just the tools or the platforms or the technical proficiency. What it's actually about is about the vision and the strategic alignment and the cultural change, because it is really bringing about major changes in the way that we operate. So I think that whole piece on cultural change is really fundamentally important for us to consider. It's really about ensuring that the ways in which we invest in and implement digital solutions and services really support our core functions as a university. And what are our core functions as a university? Obviously to educate and to research and to serve society, and to do all of that while making sure that we uphold all of our values around equity and integrity and inclusion. So that's what we're thinking about, not just the technology for the technology. So really importantly, the network is founded on the understanding that collaboration is vital, and it is absolutely vital. There's no way any one single organisation or university can actually, on its own, fully address the vast scope and the challenges and indeed the opportunities of digital transformation. So it's really about creating that space for shared expertise, shared learning and shared leadership, that the network really helps institutions to navigate all of the challenges and the opportunities and the complexity to really navigate those together. By offering guidance on emerging trends, and really importantly, evidence-based decision-making and aligning with digital developments with both institutional strategies and with national priorities. So it's really about knitting together all of those strands. I think one of the most valuable outputs of the network to date is a series of strategic reports that are being launched today. And there are 10 reports. They're authored by leading national and international experts. They explore some of the most pressing issues that we're facing in higher education in the digital age. So from the implications of generative AI to new models of teaching and learning and working, to academic integrity, data-informed decision-making, financial sustainability, these reports really offer what's really importantly strategic insights, but not just insights, they offer practical guidance. I would like to take the opportunity to really thank everyone involved in the creation of these reports, our contributors, our authors, our chief editor, Dr. Catherine Cronin, and the team in MTU's Department of Technology Enhanced Learning. In particular, I would like to say thank you to Gearóid, who's chairing the entire network, and to say thank you to Darragh Coakley and Marta Guerra, also in the TEL department. If I could take the opportunity while we're here to say a huge thank you to Dr. Sharon Flynn, who's the National Co-ordinator of the N-TUTORR Programme. I want to say thank you to you for your leadership throughout and for your absolutely enduring support. I'm saying thank you personally, I'm saying thank you from MTU, but from the entire sector. This was a massive undertaking to bring together the TUs to make sure that we could make the most of this opportunity and deliver. And Sharon, you played a huge part in that, so thank you very much indeed. Thank you. If I could also say thank you to Frances O'Connell. Great to have you here. I'm sure most people in the room know who you are, but in case they don't, Vice President of Student Education and Experience from the Technological University of the Shannon. Thank you for joining us here today, and I know you're going to share your insights, so thank you very much for that. So this event and the wider work of the NDLN really reflects MTU's own commitment to digital innovation and to sectoral leadership. As a young university, and I know that we build on a very long, deep history, but we are a young university and we're really deeply aware of the need to remain agile and to be forward-thinking. It's really important that we're in a position where we can actually help shape rather than simply be in responsive mode. So if we can shape the changing education landscape, then I think we're in a much stronger position. I would really invite you all to make the most of the opportunities this afternoon to really fully engage in the presentations and the discussions this afternoon. We spoke about collaboration being fundamental, and I really believe that when different ideas come together, then we end up with much better solutions, because it's through that collaboration and through the collective thought that I'm confident that we can then build the sort of digital future that our institutions, our students, and our societies deserve. So if we think about what they deserve, then we shouldn't go far wrong in our decision making. So I want to thank you all once again for being here. I don't have a champagne bottle to smash or anything, but anyway, I'll just simply state that I now formally launch the National Digital Leadership Network. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much. So a big thanks to Professor Cusack for opening the event and for all those kind words, and for her support of the NDLN initiative and the NTUTORR Programme, which we'll be hearing more about in a while. Before I tell you more about what's happening next, I just want to offer some further words of thanks and appreciation. So a big thank you to the steering board of the network, which has representatives from every university and institute in our sector. Some of them are here in the room among you, and many of them are joining us online. A special thank you, though, to our friend and colleague, Professor Lawrie Phepps, who is an external member of the board, but who also did a lot of the early work on the NDLN terms of reference side of things. Thank you, Lawrie. And many thanks again to Sharon Flynn, of course, who we'll be hearing from in a moment. Sharon is the coordinator of the NTUTORR Programme, which funded the creation of the NDLN and of the various reports that we're launching today. And speaking of those reports, we're really grateful also to our wonderful authors who are real leaders in their field, and we'll be hearing from them also in a while. A big shout out as well, though, to our own gang of helpers here in MTU, without whom none of this would be possible, in particular staff in my own department, including in particular Marta Guerra, who's currently in Portugal, and Darragh Coakley, who is closer by, I think, than that, somewhere in the building. But obviously, thanks to you, our attendees today. And speaking of attendees, you, our attendees, here and online, you have an opportunity now to participate and direct discussions a little bit. For this, we're using the polling tool Slido. You can see the details up on the screen right now. Right now, you can use it to answer two different questions. One is a closed poll, the other is an open one. The open one under the Q&A tab allows you to pose or upvote a question for the Q&A section at the end of today's session, if we have time for it. The other one asks, which trends and priorities are most strategically important for the future of higher education? So there's a selection of about 8 or 9 options there, drawn loosely from our report series, and very interested to hear what you have to think. So to use Slido, just go to slido.com and enter, in this case, the passcode. You can see it on the screen there, NDLN 2025. Okay, so I'm going to leave that open for a while, and then we'll come back and have a look to see what the emerging trends are and how those match up with the work and perspectives of our various authors. Next up, though, her name's been mentioned a few times already, Dr. Sharon Flynn, National Coordinator of the NTUTORR Programme, which provided the initial funding for the NDLN, and has itself, that programme, been such a transformative initiative for our whole sector. So, Sharon.
Thank you, Gearóid, and thank you, Professor Cusack, for your very kind words. If I wasn't nervous before, I'm feeling quite emotional now. So I'm going to keep this nice and simple, you'll be glad to hear. I saw all the cakes on the way in. Sorry for those of you who are joining from home, but there are loads of cakes outside. So that's what happens when you don't turn up in Cork on the day. You've probably already heard my name. My name is Sharon Flynn, and I have had the absolute privilege of being the National Coordinator of the NTUTORR Programme over the last almost 2.5 years. It has flown by in many ways, and in other ways I feel like I've aged about 10 years. NTUTOR stands for, and I had to write it down because it doesn't roll off the tongue, the National Technological University Transformation for Recovery and Resilience Programme of Work, funded by the European Union, as has already been mentioned. NTUTOR was always going to be a very ambitious programme. It's the project plan is crazy. I have got a very large spreadsheet, an Excel file, 4 work streams, 12 work packages. It has been a hugely ambitious programme to transform learning, teaching and assessment in the TU sector. It started, apparently, in April 2022. I started in November that year. And it finished in December 24. And I'm currently in that final reporting phase, which means that I've managed to get my head out of the spreadsheets for today. But it does also mean that the last couple of months have given me an opportunity to reflect on the huge achievements of NTUTOR, which have been referred to already. NTUTOR has been a really unique collaboration across 7 higher education institutions in the emerging TU sector. And the word collaboration has already been brought up today, but it really, truly has been a collaboration across the 7 partners. At a time that represented huge change in the sector. So we had 5 technological universities newly formed. The oldest one, TU Dublin, was just formed in 2019. So NTUTOR came as change upon change, and that was really impressed to me, I think, in my first, certainly my first month, probably my first week of taking on the role. And so much has been achieved. Maggie was recently just giving me feedback on the report, which we are sending back to the 𝙃𝙖 and ultimately back to the EU. And just reading through the report is so impressive to see the range of activities and the range of achievements that have emerged from NTUTOR. I would particularly like to acknowledge the role of the 7 presidents in all of this. They met 4 times per year, and they came together as a single group, which in itself is quite unique, for about an hour and a half, chaired by the 𝙃𝙧. And they really were informed about what was going on. They knew what was happening within their institutions, and indeed they championed NTUTOR within their institutions. So I would like to acknowledge and to thank all 7 presidents for their support, for their commitment, and above all, their leadership over the last 2.5 years. It has really meant a lot. NTUTOR itself then, just to reflect back a little bit, and in case there's anybody in the room who hasn't heard of NTUTOR before, we started out initially with 3 streams, which I suppose represents the focus of the work that was going on. So we had stream 1, which was all around student empowerment, stream 2 around staff development and curriculum development, and stream 3 around digital infrastructure. And I can see some of the stream leads are in the room. So we've got Francis and Gearóid are both here from stream 3, and Ken is here from stream 2. And they are just some of the members that made up the fantastic steering committee that really made sure that NTUTOR drove forward, that it achieved as much as it could achieve over the last 2.5 years. As well as the 3 streams, we also had 6 themes, and these 6 themes were interwoven into all of our activities. So they were interwoven into all of the streams, the work packages, basically everything that happened. So the 6 themes were education for sustainability, universal design for learning, equality, diversity and inclusion, academic integrity, digital transformation and employability. And you could see evidence of all of those themes throughout the work plan. And indeed, they underpinned the activities and the values of the NTUTOR programme of work. Just over a year ago then, we added a 4th stream when it became clear that there was a tiny little bit of extra funding that was available. And as a steering group, we decided to focus on sustaining the achievements of NTUTOR and looking to the future. And it was under that 4th stream that the NDLN was born. So the NDLN builds on the collegiality that has developed, the leadership capacity that has increased and been enhanced under NTUTOR. And these 2 things were increasingly and clearly emerging from the NTUTOR work. And you can see as well that themes of the reports that are being launched today align with the original 6 themes of NTUTOR. I'm almost finished, you'll be glad to hear. So as NTUTOR comes to a close, and before I get too emotional on it, I'd like to point out that the NDLN is one element that has really the potential to continue into the future and to make a real difference across the sector with support. I would like to finish by thanking Gearóid for his vision and his leadership of the National Digital Leadership Network. And I'd like to congratulate the NDLN committee on the launch today of 10 very valuable reports. And I am looking forward to reading those on the bus back to Galway this evening. So thank you very much, and thank you, Gearóid, for inviting me here today.
That's great, Sharon. Thank you so much. So I think the NDLN is just one example, really, of the legacy of the NTUTOR programme, but maybe one particularly well aligned with the original purpose and those different priorities that you spoke about there. As it happens, I'm one of the original group of NTUTOR veterans. I was technically involved with it even before Sharon was, but I must say one of the most prominent and I must say most generous and supportive members of that initial group was our next speaker, Frances O'Connell. So it's a real pleasure to introduce her as the next speaker. Please welcome Frances O'Connell, Vice President for Student Education and Experience at the Technological University of the Shannon. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I love the way he used the word veteran. That does ogre. President, I am delighted to be here with you this afternoon. And I'd like to thank Gearóid and all the TEL team. I've had the privilege of working with the TEL team over the duration of the NTUTOR project. And anytime I came here, you could see the strength of the team. So as a Cork woman, I'm always delighted to come back to Cork. Gearóid told me I had 2 minutes, which actually is never a problem for a Cork person because we just talk faster, even if you only have 1 minute. So as Gearóid said, there was a special group of us and my own president, Professor Vincent Cannan. And again, when you situate the timeline of NTUTOR, so at the time we had been on our journey to be a TU, and AIT and LIT came together to be designated as a technological university on the 1st of October. I had previously worked in LIT and I went up to AIT as Vice President for Academic Affairs and Registrar. Guess when? About 4 weeks before COVID broke out, which was a baptism of fire. And then when we became a TU, Vincent said to me, you have a history of project management in your background and technology, and obviously in view of your passion for students, would you like to be on the N-TUTOR project? Because I'm nominating you. And it was one of those very special projects. And that's why I think we were very fortunate. I worked with Gearóid. I think we used the word Senate, wasn't it? There was a group of us that came together, and I'd like to acknowledge those colleagues right across the N-TUTOR team that started from the get-go. We wrote N-TUTOR in 6 weeks. 40 million, and I've worked on big projects around the world. And the reason why was because the people that were at the table were very passionate. And the most important thing we were passionate about was the student. And some of us had seen what COVID had meant. And you talked about the word equity and inclusion and participation. And for me, that was very much to the fore. So when you have passionate people that actually know from direct experience, experiential and otherwise, what this means, it didn't take a lot for us to write it. And we very much had student empowerment, and I'd like to just to acknowledge Dr. 𝙃𝙤𝙧𝙞𝙯 and Dr. Maureen Maguire on that stream. We also had around student at the centre, supporting the development of staff capabilities laid out on that stream by Ken McCarthy and Jacqueline McCormack. And then Gearóid, fellow Corkoni, and myself, and Dr. Diarmuid O'Callaghan, who's now president of 𝙃𝙤𝙧𝙞𝙯, and also David in IADT. We set out working out the digital ecosystem. So we very much kind of sat down and thought about the big issues that we were addressing. And one of the things that went by the wayside myself to finish was my own PhD, and it's kind of got pushed down the road a lot of the times. But I'm very much kind of the academic at heart. And I've always thought that N-TUTOR and the ndln project are classic case studies of the strength of weak ties. So there may be sociologists in the room here, and the strength of weak ties is a concept by Granovetter. 1973 he came up with it, and I've always thought of it in terms of my own work across the world and in the TU sector particularly. And he argued that weak ties, acquaintances that we have, can actually be more valuable than strong ties. Our close friends, or even our close work colleagues. This is because weak ties often connect different social groups, facilitating the flow of information and resources across diverse networks. So his analysis suggested that these connections can lead to new opportunities and insights that strong ties may not provide, as strong ties often have similar information, resources, bias, groupthink. So big topics, such as those addressed by the ndln and the reports, are examples of the themes that are too vast, too fast in terms of their morphing and evolution, to keep up with on our own. They're just too big. We need the strength of weak ties, or our acquaintances, to connect us to those big themes or wicked problems, using another sociologist, Rittle's ideas. And I know this from the work that we did on N-TUTOR and ndln, because with such ties come new learnings. We learn from one another. With such ties come new opportunities. So I know already, even post N-TUTOR, we have the strength of one another on new opportunities. even new ties are identified, and it basically perpetuates the cycle. So ties create economies of scale and scope to address important areas. And as the President has said, ties allow sharing and collaboration and that disruptive thinking. And we had a lot of disruptive thinking on NTUTOR in the early days, and late nights and early mornings and all of that. So today, we mark the concept of the power of weak ties and our acquaintances in our professional and social network in the HE system, facilitating the flow of information, ideas, learnings, and resources across a multinational landscape, including our authors on these reports, and creating strong ties through such work. And today I would hope that such strong ties will grow and flourish, and in this case through NDLN. So I would like to congratulate Gearóid and all the MTU team and the wider NTUTOR team who have created NDLN for their foresight to do so and what has been achieved with same to date. And obviously I would like to be part of that network as we go forward. I couldn't conclude though, because today is a special day. We're running out of time of publicly celebrating NTUTOR as it comes into its final days in terms of its operation. But Sharon, to your leadership and all of your, we could very much see across the project, and there's many in the room here and are probably online today that work directly on the project, about the strength of distributed leadership as well. We gave it away to all of our colleagues. And with that, we got far more back. And that included all of the colleagues that were on the programme steering board, and some are probably online as well today. I've been around, I am a veteran. I'm actually 45 years working this month. And I've actually known from the get-go that NTUTOR was very special, you know. And I think it was because of the fact what we witnessed was happening to our students during that awful period of COVID, and we were never going to risk 40 million, never. We wanted to ensure we got the value for it. I would also like to thank, I know Sharon, you have done it in your role, but we cannot underestimate the value of the President's Forum on NTUTOR. When you consider that the TUs were created from the 1st of January up until 1st of January 2019, up until May 2022. And NTUTOR came in there and the presidents were incredible. And I think we absolutely cannot underestimate the power of that. I'd also like to sincerely thank the HEA, Tim Connell and Victoria Brownlee and Anna Wall, because they actually believed in us. I'd say they sat there thinking, oh, holy God, what are they going to do with that? Because of the timeline. But they really did support us and supported the reworkings that we had to do. And obviously, I'd like to thank all colleagues in TEL as well. So hopefully we have the power of the strength of our weak ties going forward. And I look forward to meeting some again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Frances. Okay, so one of the big outputs of the network to date, as has been mentioned, has been the commissioning of these 10 strategic reports. They were authored by leading national and international experts who we're going to hear from soon. Before we get to the authors, though, we're going to hear from the editor for the series, somebody quite well known to everyone working in the digital learning and open education world space in this country and beyond, Dr. Catherine Cronin. She worked very closely with us and with the authors, and we were very grateful for her help and her expertise. It was really quite an accomplishment to get such a variety of high quality, well-researched reports evaluated, commissioned, drafted, revised, and author approved in just 4 months, I think it was. So Catherine was very important to getting things done well and getting things done quickly, which are sometimes difficult things to combine. So we might play the video there of Catherine, who unfortunately can't be with us today.
Hello, I'm Catherine Cronin. I worked as the series editor for the NDLN reports. Elsewhere in this launch event, you'll hear about the specific reports. I want to highlight the fact that each report was the product of dialogue between the authors and the NDLN team. As a result, each report reflects the domain expertise of the authors, but also has been contextualized to be relevant to the Irish TU sector, to provide links to Irish HE policy and EU legislation where appropriate, and importantly, to reflect the NDLN and N-TUTOR values relevant to digital leadership. These include equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility, ethical approaches, and sustainability. I'll conclude simply by saying that it was an enormous pleasure to work with each of the authors and with the team at MTU. I see the National Digital Leadership Network as a vital new forum for knowledge and policy development in the Irish TU sector and beyond. I hope the reports have a wide readership. Thank you.
Okay, great. So if you haven't got a physical copy of at least one of the reports, be sure to grab a copy before you go. So we're just about to hear from our authors, but before we cut to them, let me just remind you again of those poll questions. There's one closed poll and one open one. The open one allows you to pose or upvote a question for the Q&A section of the day. The closed one is about trends and priorities in higher education today. Okay, so we might have a look at the results for that second one after the first author segment. But right now, let's hear from those authors. And first up, I think we have Mairead Pratschke. Excellent.
Hello, I am Mairead Pratschke, and I am the author of the report entitled New Horizons for Higher Education, Teaching and Learning with Generative AI. So very much what it sounds like. This report is looking at the opportunities and the challenges that generative AI poses or offers to higher education. Everything we've been hearing about for the last few years, from everything from academic integrity, threats to assessment, to the promises of personalized learning at scale and others. So the report really aims to look at the research that we have so far and look at some of the key areas and tell us what is going on out in the world, not just in Ireland, but further afield, what the early research is telling us about efficacy and inefficacy, and what we need to take from that in terms of maybe lessons, heads up, and just ideas for strategy in terms of where we can start ourselves in terms of generative AI implementation. So the report focuses on three key areas. The areas are, first of all, the impact of generative AI on current teaching and assessment practices. So looking at current applications, looking at the shift to learner-centered approaches. That's the first section. Then I go into emerging pedagogy. Really, what are we at? Where are we at in terms of AI pedagogy? What does it look like? What are the kinds of international practices that are emerging from the experiments that we're seeing? And what do the early research findings tell us about both research on the one hand and also opportunities? And then finally, the last section is really the one where I think this will be hopefully really of interest to leaders, people who are looking at funding, people who are looking at writing strategy for their organization. And this is about generative AI in the sense of it being the next phase of digital transformation. So AI transformation. What do we need to be thinking about in terms of future careers, the skills agenda? What do our graduates need to know about generative AI? How do they need to be learning with generative AI as well as about generative AI so that they are ready for the labor market and the future of work that is now really rapidly emerging? So the report distills those findings into actionable recommendations and hopefully provides you with some clear guidance and direction, which, as I said, is really aimed at institutional leaders, those shaping policy and strategy for generative AI integration into teaching practice in a way that will, very importantly, align with your institutional values and strategic priorities. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Professor Peter Bryant, and I am the Associate Dean Education and Professor of Business Education at the University of Sydney Business School in Sydney, Australia. And I am the author of one of these reports that looks at the pipeline of students coming into higher education. This is not a static pipeline. The students coming into higher education in our undergraduate, postgraduate, and our lifelong learning provision are not the same as they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Their demographics, their socioeconomics, and their psychological makeup are all changing as they are exposed to technology, as they're exposed to their peers, as they're engaging with the challenges of the world that is in front of them. This report tries to look at those generations as they're constructed through a lot of the sociological literature, thinking about Generation Z, millennials, and the generation about to come into higher education, Generation Alpha. And what are they looking for from a higher education experience? What kind of knowledge and skills do they want to develop? What kind of attitudes, opinions, and values do they want to bring to their life and career? And how do the programs, units of study, and courses that we offer engage them not just with our understandings of what a discipline or an area of study looks like, but with what they hope to gain from engaging with our universities, our schools, our faculties, our disciplines. It's a grand challenge for higher education, and one that I hope this report will help us understand, interrogate, but also design an education for the future.
Hello, I'm Martin Weller, Emeritus Professor at the UK Open University, and I've written a report called New Learning and Teaching Models Through Digital Transformation. Since 2020, higher education has seen the rise of blended learning following the pandemic, and more recently the advent of artificial intelligence. This creates a climate of uncertainty and change in the sector. This report hopes to address some of that by looking at 5 key topics, namely hybrid and blended modes for learning, micro-credentials, generative AI, extended reality, and adaptive and personalised learning. And for each of these, it offers an overview, a state of the art, and also a practical example for you to consider if you're thinking about implementing them. And it ends with 5 key recommendations. And these are 1, determine the principles of adoption. 2, develop a learning design approach. 3, plan for flexibility and resilience. 4, encourage experimentation by staff. And 5, develop a pedagogy of care. I hope you enjoy the report.
Hi, my name is Andrew Pope, and I am a senior lecturer in Cork University Business School. And along with my co-authors, Juan Young and Simon Woodworth, we have written the report From Data Literacy to Data Mastery, Enhanced Data-Driven Decision-Making in the Age of AI. In our paper, we discuss how AI has changed our relationship with data and decision-making. And we also looked at how we can ensure that our students have the skills that they need in this rapidly changing job environment. We know that there's a huge demand for students with highly technical skills. However, we also know that the half-life of these technical skills is very short and getting even shorter. So we know that we need to couple these hard skills with durable soft skills. And we call this combination of hard skills and soft skills data mastery. So we want students to move from data literacy to data mastery. And it's not just a combination of hard skills and soft skills. We also need to change our lens. So not just looking at the current need in industry for those students with operational skills, we also need to equip our students with tactical and strategic skills. So these are not just the students who are going to be employed in industry, but those students who are going to shape our AI future.
Okay, super. So just ending there with Andrew Pope, who I think is in the audience here. Hi, Andrew. I know the majority of our authors are watching online as well, so great to have you joining us. Right, so time is ticking along here, but maybe let's just have a super quick look at those poll results. So you were asked which trends and priorities are most strategically important for the future of higher education. Let me see if I can get it up on my screen here. So, unsurprisingly, generative AI preparedness and adoption comes through. Number one seems to feature in every report about current and emerging trends in the area, and then perhaps not unrelated, academic integrity and institutional trust. With a view to getting through the next sequence of authors, though, I'm not going to comment further. People can just have a look at it themselves. And I'm going to say, let's roll it basically. Let's move forward to the next sequence of authors, starting, I think, with Dr. Anne-Marie Scott, who I noticed is soon to become the Vice President of the Commonwealth of Learning. So congratulations to her. So if we can just play the next clip of authors there.
Hi, I'm Anne-Marie Scott, and I've written Full Circle EdTech, Connecting Procurement, Practice and People. The key theme of this report is the ethical procurement and sustainable management of educational technology, EdTech. The report frames EdTech procurement and management not just as an administrative or an IT concern, but as a critical quality assurance matter that has significant implications for teaching, learning, and institutional risk management. I'm arguing that how we acquire EdTech and how we support it has a material impact on the learning experience in our institutions. And I'm pulling out several key findings. The first is that there is a gap in how we go about procurement today and what we might consider ethical, sustainable, and management of educational technologies to be. And I'm suggesting that most institutions, not just the Irish sector, lack critical frameworks, policies, and maybe even some of the expertise needed to properly evaluate technologies beyond the kind of functional and compliance stuff that we do today. And secondly, I'm suggesting that educational technology decisions are often made without sufficient input from all the key stakeholders, people like learning technologists, academic staff, students, despite the fact that these technologies have quite profound effects on teaching practices and learning experiences. So I'm arguing a bit for a reconceptualization of practice, arguing for more collaboration, balanced representation, and maybe a little bit of a change in what the professional practices of people like learning technologists should include. And all of this, I think, is really important for the NDLN community in particular, given the aspirations for the technological university sector and the use of digital education to meet your mandates. I also suggest, when you get it right, there's going to be a bit of a potential cost to success. So I'm also providing some suggestions for how you can manage this at a sector level through things like shared services. And that's where the full circle piece comes in here, because actually sector level procurement is often where you can start some of this with things like, buying your VLE, for example. So really trying to look at this, not just in the context of a single institution, but maybe how we need to reconceptualize and reframe practices at a sector level as well to achieve a fairly substantial change. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dr. Mara Deepwell, and I'm the author of a new report on global trends towards flexible, hybrid working and its impact for digital leadership in higher education. Hybrid, flexible, and flipped learning is becoming the norm for our ever more diverse student population. Similarly, we are seeing a shift towards hybrid working in higher education as a workplace. This new report explores how leaders in higher education can work towards enhancing digital capabilities for students and for staff, and how to expand student success attributes ready for entering an increasingly hybrid workplace. The report also explores how we can develop the right kind of leadership to build success, and how to translate the expertise that higher education institutions already have for blended learning, teaching, and assessment into long-term sustainable success in hybrid working.
Hello, I'm Richard Watermere, Professor of Higher Education at the University of Bristol and Co-Director of the Centre for Higher Education Transformations. I'm also the lead author of the review Ethical Digital Higher Education Leadership, sponsored by the N-TUTORR National Digital Leadership Framework. Our review provides an empirically informed consideration of ethical leadership in the midst of digital transformation for higher education institutions. It focuses on digital educational leadership practices, profiles and models, what digital literacy, digital skills and digital competencies look like among higher education leaders, and how we get to preparedness and maturity of digital leadership. The report considers the social and cultural and the organizational and operational challenges and opportunities for both ethical leadership of digital transformation in higher education settings and ethical higher education leadership through digital transformation. In the report, my co-authors and I look at changing business models, resourcing needs, and concerns regarding the dangers of technological solutionism. We also look at institutional culture change, work organization, staff and student health and well-being, equality, diversity and inclusivity agendas, and the environmental impacts of technology adoption. We hope you enjoy our report.
Hi, I'm Sarah Elaine Eaton.
And I am Beatriz Moya.
And together we've authored the Horizon Scanning Report on Academic Institutional Integrity. Our report explores how academic integrity is evolving in higher education, especially in the context of rapid technological change.
We looked at global challenges like counter cheating, credential fraud, and the rise of AI-generated content.
But also at how institutions are responding with innovative strategies and systemic approaches rooted in ethics and education.
We emphasize the shift from individual blame to shared responsibility.
And the importance of leadership, clear policies, and educational development opportunities that promote teaching and learning with integrity.
Now, we'd love to hear from you. What insights resonate with your context? What ideas would you add?
Let's keep the conversation going on social media.
I'm Doug Belshaw.
And I'm Laura Hilliger. We've written a report for the NDLN on micro and digital credentialing.
So we met at Mozilla in 2011, where we collaborated on the first version of Open Badges, aiming to democratize credentialing. Today, many institutions provide smaller qualifications, often called micro-credentials, that recognize specific skills. But simply putting short courses online isn't enough. Learners deserve credentials based on international digital standards.
So we think the best approach is to use Open Badges version 3 with a verifiable credentials data model. This ensures that credentials are portable and verifiable across institutions and borders, just like a driver's license. Digital wallets give learners control so that they can share their lifelong learning journey with employers and institutions.
And this approach supports the shift that we're seeing towards skills-based hiring and chimes with the original Mozilla mission. It's a much more holistic approach, which these days goes by the name Open Recognition.
So we invite you to explore the full report and discover how digital credentials can transform education and workforce development in your context.
Okay, so just ending that particular and final sequence with Doug Belshaw and his colleague Laura. We seem to be running out of time a little bit unexpectedly. I did promise to keep people just for 1 hour. So I think what I'm going to do is give some people now the opportunity, if they want to head off, both our online and in-person attendees. But for those who want to stay on, I think maybe we'll have a bit of a chat for another maybe 10 or 15 minutes, because we did put up an open poll question there. And I'm curious for one to know what question people wanted to pose to the panel. So we'll give people just a chance to slip away there, because in fairness, we did promise to keep people only until 4 o'clock. And I suppose just in concluding, thanks everyone for coming along, both our in-person and online audience. Thanks to our speakers and authors, and a special thanks to the team here who worked so hard to make things happen. Okay, so that was the result of our second poll. I didn't quite get to introduce that, so we may just, if that's okay, Roisin, skip to the open poll, the Q&A question that we said could be posed to people. Okay, so first up, as I understand it, digital innovation and transformation are clearly strategically important, okay, but how can we ensure the developments are inclusive and accessible to all? Okay, so that's a great question. There's definitely a balance there between innovation on the one hand and inclusiveness and accessibility on the other. I know as part of the N-TUTOR project, we were very keen on the whole notion of digital by design, which is the notion of not just choosing for people and certainly avoiding any practices that might be exclusionary, but rather building around at every phase, building around the needs of our users, both staff and students included, and in that way, I suppose, create something that's highly accessible and inclusive. And I guess to only deploy digital as well, where it brings value and where it solves problems. But you've heard enough from me. Maybe Frances, I know this is kind of in your wheelhouse a bit, isn't it, in terms of your VP role?
Yeah, it is, in terms of access and widening participation, and also the Centre for Pedagogical Innovation and Development. So the student, in terms of the profile of students that we have, and obviously we'd be very conscious here. I think all of us in higher education institutions in Ireland now are working to the Strategic Performance Framework that has access and widening participation as one of the 4 pillars of the work that we do, and setting out indicators and targets in terms of what we're doing to specifically enable priority groups. I think also we're very conscious in terms of what do we mean in inclusive practices, and how does that reflect in our hardware, our software, our physical infrastructure, that wider digital ecosystem, and then how do we embed that universal design which is around the inclusion in terms of our teaching and learning practices, our assessment practices, and recognising the diversity of our student population. And I suppose for all of us, we're very conscious of the fact of the increasing profile of the learning differences of our students and neurodiverse, and how do we ensure that we recognise all students in terms of their learning and supporting them. And that includes, I think one of the questions that was there earlier today, just coming up on is how we assure the assessment of them that's fair as well and equitable against that backdrop.
Okay, excellent. And obviously inclusiveness and accessibility were pretty key to the N-TUTOR project. Do you want to add anything there, Sharon?
Yeah, one thing that I would like to add to this, obviously as higher education institutions and leaders within those organisations, the words ethics and integrity came up quite a bit when we heard from the authors there, and we have to ensure that everything we do is inclusive and doesn't introduce more divisions or inequalities. And one thing that I have learned over the last number of years is that we cannot address this without having the voices of all stakeholders, and in this case it particularly includes our students, and having as diverse a collection of student voices involved in decision making as possible, because often we make assumptions about what our students can or can't do, or what they can or can't access, but until we actually hear from the students who are impacted and hear exactly what those impacts are, we don't understand really. So my answer to that question is that we need to include more student voices. We need to ensure that we have structures in place that facilitate us to hear those student voices. And only until we allow those voices to be heard, we really have no idea about the impacts of our decision making and the impacts of our policies. So that's my response to that.
That's such a great point. We'll just see if we perhaps have time for one more question here. So the next up is a tricky one. How will the network be sustained? Well, I suppose one thing I can say is the NTUTOR programme is now finished, but members of the NDLN steering board have agreed to continue to meet and continue to work. We will continue to try to host events and respond to new technological changes. And I have been having certain conversations around the place, and there does seem to be a lot of interest in the network, as reflected, I suppose, by the numbers of people who have registered for today's event. I think we've over 260 people registered. Beyond that, I don't know if I'm permitted to say anything. Do you want to add anything, Frances?
Yeah, and I think even we saw Professor Sarah Eaton there and others in terms of even on the poll, what came up very high around this area of academic integrity and Gen AI. And I think we really, and I know one of the papers there, and the author is in the audience, around we have a responsibility with our students in terms of their developing their ethical practice, you know, on that personal care side, because it is our responsibility in terms of those generations that have come through, you know, the social media world, of what we mean by ethical practice, and then how does that translate into academic practice? How are we ethical in our practice as regards assessment design, and how do we assure that ethics? You know, so I think there is, like, that whole theme that we've had around academic integrity on Work Package 3.1 of NTUTOR, that's not going away. It's actually ramping up in terms, and again, the collaboration, the network, that strength of the wee ties again in terms of us. And we have done work with QQI, and we will be launching the deliverables from NTUTOR as well, that sectorally we worked on, which are important pieces for our sector.
Excellent. Okay, so there's a lot there definitely around ethical and value-based leadership, clearly. Did you want to add anything, Sharon?
I suppose just in terms of sustainability of some of the NTUTOR activities, and there were a number of initiatives which have been so important and have really had an impact on the sector, including the NDLN. I think NTUTOR really showed the power of collaboration, and that's come up a number of times during this afternoon. But collaboration isn't easy, and collaboration takes work. But it is so very important. So my hope is that the collaboration will continue. I think it will continue in the short term, but maybe in the more medium and longer term, it needs perhaps, first of all, permission. So I would be looking to some of our university leaders to give permission for the networks to continue, and to give people permission to continue to network. But ultimately, it's going to need some sort of incentive to continue into the future. So I don't know how that incentive might appear, but if the HEA are listening online, you've heard me say this before, and I'll just say it again. Collaboration takes work, and it needs incentivizing. So do what you can.
Okay, that's perhaps not a bad point to end on, really. So you heard it here. We're looking for sponsorship and patronage. Thank you very much, HEA. Okay, folks, thanks a million for staying on just for that extra bit. I was keen to just get a little bit of discussion in. And thanks so much again to Sharon and Frances for coming along. And I suppose as a final note to our audience, our authors, and our speakers, I hope we can continue the conversation online and off. Thanks again for coming along. Cheers.